One morning, Thomas and Percy were sitting in the sheds when the Fat Controller arrived. "Good morning, you two," he said. "I have a special for one of you to take." "A special?" Percy said, sounding excited. "What is it, sir?" "I would like one of you to go to Edward's station and collect the Christmas tree for our party later." "Oh, please, sir," said Thomas. "May I do it?" "Certainly," said the Fat Controller, "though you must wear your snowplow as there is a chance of snow later on." Just then, as if on cue, James puffed up next to the shed. "Oh, taking the Christmas tree, aren't we, Thomas?" James said rudely. "That's a very fitting job for a small tank engine like you. We big tender engines don't have time for minuscule jobs like that." "All right then, James," said the Fat Controller. "You will do Thomas's work while he is away." "Oh, heckle who," said James, and he raced away. Thomas had been fitted with his snowplow and was now waiting to build up steam. As he did so, Percy pulled up next to him with a very festive-looking train. "Percy," said Thomas, sounding very surprised, "where are you off to, all brightly decorated?" "The Fat Controller told me to collect decorations for the party, and he also said to be right on time. Ta-ta, see you later." Thomas then set off, now having plenty of steam, and it wasn't long before he reached Edward's station. Thomas arrived and saw that Edward was already there waiting for him. "Hello, Thomas," said Edward. "Are you here for the Christmas tree?" "Why, yes I am," said Thomas proudly. "Do you know where it is?" "Indeed," said Edward. "It's right over there in the siding behind me." "Perfect," said Thomas. "I'll get right to it." And with that, Edward moved forward to allow Thomas to pass. He then quickly reversed and backed down onto his train. But as he was about to leave, Edward stopped him. "That's a pretty tall load you have there, Thomas. Remember to be careful." "Oh, don't worry," said Thomas. "I'll be there spick and span and right on time." "Well, yes, but before Edward could finish, Thomas set off. "I hope he knows what he's doing." Thomas was making good time as he strolled along the line. "Must be on time, must be on time," Thomas said to himself. As they rounded the next bend, Thomas saw that they were approaching a very low-hanging bridge. Thomas thought nothing of it at first, but then it happened. The tree fell off the flatbed and hit the ground. The brake van had also derailed from the impact. The sudden jolt from all of this caused Thomas to be decoupled from the train. "Oh, botheration," said Thomas angrily. "Now I'll be late, and the Fat Controller will be cross with me." Just then, Thomas heard puffing sounds in the distance. It was Henry, pulling a long goods train. He stopped when he saw Thomas. "Thomas, what happened? Are you all right?" Henry said. "Oh, I'm fine," said Thomas, "but my train is derailed. Do you think you could lend a wheel?" "Sure thing," said Henry. "Let me just go drop these goods off, and then I'll come back around." And sure enough, Henry returned shortly. "All right, this looks easy enough," said Henry. "We'll have you out of here in a couple of puffs." "I shall hope so," said Thomas. Henry puffed up to the derailed brake van and heaved it back onto the tracks. Thomas quickly backed down onto the train. "Wow, thanks, Henry," said Thomas. "You're a very strong engine." "But what of my tree?" Thomas added. "Surely I can't go without it." "Indeed," said Henry. "I'm afraid I can't really do much about that." "What about a crane?" Thomas asked. "Surely you can go and fetch one of those." "A crane?" said Henry. "That's all the way back in the yard, and that's hours from here." "Well, do you have any other ideas?" asked Thomas. Just then, Terrence the tractor arrived, who had been working in a nearby field. "Hey, what's all the commotion?" asked Terrence. "Oh, Terrence, maybe you can help us," said Thomas. "Do you think you can push that tree back onto my flatbed for me?" "I'm not sure how that happened, but sure, Thomas, I'll give it a try." Terrence huffed over to the tree and got ready to push. "All right, here goes nothing," said Terrence. And with a great heave, Terrence pushed the tree back onto the flatbed. Thomas's driver and fireman quickly secured the tree in place. "Thank you, Terrence," said Thomas, and with that, Thomas left, continuing on once more, only this time much more carefully. Meanwhile, the other engines were growing impatient, waiting for Thomas. "Where is that silly little engine?" said James. "He probably fell down another mine." laughed Gordon. "Silence!" boomed the Fat Controller. "Thomas will be here soon." Just then, Thomas raced into the yard. "Thomas, where have you been?" said the Fat Controller. Explain yourself." "I'm sorry, sir," said Thomas, out of breath. Thomas told the Fat Controller all about what had happened. "While I'm glad you got here safely," said the Fat Controller, "it's important to know not to rush your jobs." "Indeed," Edward added. "I did tell you to be careful." "I'm sorry, sir," said Thomas. "That's settled then," said the Fat Controller. "Come on now, everyone. It's time to celebrate." Thomas's tree had been unloaded and placed on the turntable for all the engines to see. My, said Thomas. "What a lovely tree." "Indeed," agreed Percy. "Such splendid colors." "But not as splendid as my red paint," James said. Everyone laughed, and then the party began.